Hey there, I'm Chris Owens, otherwise known as Chris Old Dude, and we're here with the People's Voice Cafe TV, what I like to call the PVC NYC TV, and we are interviewing Jon Dell today. Hi, Jon, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. I understand that you're a local guy, that you're basically in Brooklyn?
Yes. Yeah. I live in Flatbush, Ditmas Park area.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, actually, I was just in your neighborhood the other day. I'm a Brooklynite in terms of my history. I now don't reside there anymore, but I don't tell anybody that. Oh, wait, this is going to be on TV. No, just kidding. Yeah, I moved a couple of years ago, but love Brooklyn. Lived there basically all my life, and it will always be the center of my heart. So nice to meet another Brooklynite. Also, I have several band member colleagues who live in your neighborhood, so maybe one day we'll all get together.
Oh yeah, I hope so.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I will freely admit I never heard of you, which doesn't mean anything, in terms of the great annals of music, because there are a lot of people I never heard of who I should have, and a lot of folks I don't know who I'm getting to know through these interviews, and I'm really enjoying that. So tell us a little about your life. Where were you born? Where were you raised? What got you started in music? Your inspirations? That kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I mean, I grew up in Nebraska. That was for let's see, I was up through high school in a small little town about an hour south of Lincoln. And then after my freshman year of college, I dropped out and I moved to Chicago for a little bit, and then I came back and finished school. Stayed in Lincoln until about when I was about 27, and then I moved out here, and I've been out here for almost 10 years now.
Wow, welcome.
Thanks.
You're an immigrant.
Yeah. Well, like many people in New York.
That's right.
Yeah.
Billy Joel had a song that starts with the opening line about Los Angeles. Los Angelinos all come from somewhere. And I was like, yeah, Billy, you're from New York, and that's exactly the same in New York.
Yeah.
It's not different. So
Yeah.
you were a Cornhusker, huh? And so in high school and college, were you a musical type, a sports type,
Yeah,
type?
I've been a lifelong musician. Started playing the guitar when I was about 6 years old. And yeah, I've just been obsessed with music my whole life. I do like sports, though. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself an athlete, but I do enjoy sports. Go Big Red. It's hard being a Husker fan. It really is. We're not very good.
Well, that's only now. When I was growing up, you guys were great. So
Yeah. That's every Nebraskan has been pining for those days ever since.
I love it. So what was the magic switch that turned you on? Was it your parents? Was it something you heard? And why guitar as opposed to any other instrument?
I think it was just. I mean, it's just always been. I think birth was the thing, that the catalyst for me being a musician. I don't know. It's always been. Music is just the thing that touches me the deepest, I think. I do love art in all forms. I'm also a big theater guy. I love theater. But music has always been and will always be my first love. And
Why guitar?
Guitar, I guess. I guess when I was little, I was drawn to the flashiness of the electric guitar. I wanted to learn electric guitar. The only person around there who taught music only taught classical, so I played classical for a really long time.
Oh, good. You know your technique. That's marvelous.
Yeah. So I've I know my technique and my theory and all that. Looking back now, though, if I had it all to do again, I think I probably would have you know, if I'd have known how much work I would have gotten if I had been a piano player or
Hmm.
or or even a bass player,
Interesting.
maybe I would have done it a little different. But
Are you saying that there are too many guitarists out
you know, I don't know if there's too many, but it's tough to get work as a guitar player unless you're absolutely a magnificent player.
there? Hmm.
Um,
Okay, I can understand that. And in New York in particular,
yeah,
it doesn't matter what instrument you're on. There's so much incredible talent here in the
yeah,
city that it makes it extra hard, definitely.
yeah, and people who are willing to work harder than than a lot of people. But it's good though. It keeps. I am. That's one thing I am glad about moving here. It has definitely challenged me and pushed me a little bit, which which has been great. I think it's definitely made me a better musician and a
Well,
better
that's
artist.
cool. What got you into songwriting in particular?
I think I was always drawn to storytelling. That's always been uh, my big thing. And but which is part of the reason why I love theater and I love drama and uh, that I'm drawn to storytelling. Um, I think when I was younger, I got really into like a lot of the folk singer songwriters, like Bob Dylan, obviously, and like uh, and all that. And what I was drawn to was the storytelling, and then I it all kind of clicked for me the first time I heard a guy named Todd Snyder.
Hmm.
Um, and he combines storytelling and like telling funny stories and then singing uh, sad songs. And the first time I saw him, I was like, oh, that's how you do it, like uh, and that's what I felt like I had been trying to do. Um, and then it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a storyteller and a folk singer. I remember this one time. So this is one thing that I think back on, like one of the first times that I really got the performance bug. I was in elementary school. I don't remember what grade, but I was real young, and we had this like assembly, and then this guy, I don't know who he was, but he came and he started telling us about storytelling and how before there was writing, this is how history and information and everything got passed. And so he had us like create a story, up there, and he got all these little kids, and I volunteered, and he picked me, and I was really excited. And I don't remember what exactly it was, but it was I was supposed to be like a little baby bird or something, uh, and he said, oh, like something, oh, and the bird let out a mighty yell or something. I don't remember exactly, but like I did something kind of over the top, and then like all the kids laughed, and and I remember thinking like, what was that? Ooh, I liked that.
That first moment of adulation.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I knew who that guy was. Maybe if I went back to my old principal or something, they might be able to tell me who that was. But uh, yeah, but that was the moment that I was like, ooh, I think that's what I want to do. You know?
It's very interesting. We all have those moments where you kind of go, oh wow, this is not just how it's supposed to be, but this is what and who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah,
And I think that happens to everybody who decides that they want to create, whether they want to be a public person or a private person. There's that moment where you connect with the art form that you feel is yours and is you. And it can happen at any age, and it often happens to us when we're very, very young. I too was I'm on the piano side. My mother was my piano teacher, so I didn't have even think about a guitar until my younger brother picked up a guitar in middle school and fell in love with the Beatles, and he started
Hmm.
playing guitar, and I still had no interest in it. So I've always been the keyboard guy. But you get those moments, and you hear something, you go, I want to do that, or I want to be that. And so I hear you. That's great. That's a great story. So when you were coming up through school and you kept playing music, who were some of your? I mean, yes, you mentioned Dylan in terms of storytelling, but who were some of your musical influences who made you want to play guitar more as opposed to just doing the storytelling side?
Um, hmm. Well, when I was younger in my teen years, I was really into punk rock. That was a
Ah,
big thing for me. And I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian household. Um, so it was like a moment, like there was something where it kind of clicked for me when I think I heard the first band that kind of like sent me down that path. I think was NoFX.
mm,
um, and then and then when I was in high school, I got really into jazz. I really liked
mm.
jazz, but there was nobody who could teach me jazz. Um, so yeah, I guess I really wanted to be, a great guitar player, but I was very unsatisfied um, with the availability. There wasn't anybody around who could teach me like advanced jazz theory and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of started getting more drawn to the storytelling side of things and to all of that. But then as I've gotten older, I've gotten way more into guitar playing, and I kind of remembered that I am an instrumentalist too. Um, and coming to New York, I've gotten to study with some really amazing uh, guitar players and teachers, like Jason Laughlin, Michael Daves, um, some people like that. Um, so for the big guitar guys, for me are the bluegrass guitar guys. I love flat picking guitar.
Got it.
Um, so Doc Watson is probably the guy for me. Um, that was another thing was when I found bluegrass. That was a big thing, and it wasn't what I didn't expect to love it so much, because I was into punk rock and metal and stuff, and
Slightly
then like
different.
yeah, and then there was this band out of Lawrence, Kansas. Um, they were called Split Lip Rayfield, and the guitar player was this metalhead dude. Uh, and then they just had the most amazing banjo player and mandolin player, and then their bass player uh, was a welder, and he made his own bass out of it. He got a gas tank out of like a '57 Ford or something, and then he welded a big rod on the top of it and put a weed whacker wire on it and
Wow.
played a one string bass, and it sounded fantastic.
Wow.
um, and so I saw them, and I was like, "Whoa! Like that was awesome!" And then the summer of my senior year of high school, I got my tax return. I think it was like $400 or something, uh, and so I hopped on a train and I took it out to Telluride, Colorado, and went to the Telluride Bluegrass Festival.
Oh.
And that was after that, like that was it for me. Like yeah, that was a defining moment of my life as well. Was going to Telluride the first
Did
time.
you major in music in college?
I did. I was a guitar major for a few years, um, but like I said, I was really unsatisfied with the instruction I was receiving. They had the drum teacher teaching me guitar, which I thought was an interesting choice.
I mean,
But
if he was also a good guitar player, great. But if he
he was a
wasn't,
decent guitar player, but like I had a suspicion that I was a better guitar player than him,
yeah,
and so I would go in and I would sight read my lessons, and he would be like, "Oh, great!" And I was like, "I literally did not practice once this week."
oh
You know,
no,
like I don't. So anyway, when I went back to school to finish my degree, I finished my degree in theater uh, rather than music. Um, um, yeah. Um, so yeah, but I did study music formally in college. Um,
Formally and formerly.
yes. Well, I'm still studying. Still studying.
Right, that's true.
Um, uh,
What were you influenced by musicals at all? I mean, did you have particular interest in those, or was it just
I
all theater?
You know, I do love a good musical. I will admit I'm more fond of like the classic Broadway stuff than a lot of the new Disney
Hmm.
stuff that's getting pumped out right now. Um, so I the other thing for me is I love musicals, but I can't dance. I'm such a terrible dancer. So
Okay.
that kind of I was like, oh shit, I
You
guess.
weren't going to be front row on the stage for the opening production number.
Yeah, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be getting those kind of roles or anything.
Well,
So
that means you have to go for the role where you get to stand and sing while everybody dances around you.
yeah, that's the one. I can do that.
Pajama Game has a couple of scenes like that. I remember that from when I was doing high school theater. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I didn't have to dance. I got to sing. That was it. Good.
yeah,
Works.
perfect.
That's very funny. That's very funny. So, in terms of your stories, I was reading your short bio, and I wanted to get a better sense of what dolor means. You use that word in the bio, and just how you approach. You make reference to the fact that you sort of have this way of dealing with stories that have sadness in them, as well as stories that are jubilant. And so I'm curious to know, when you're approaching a song, um, what are the components that work for you? Do you start like many guitarists strumming some chords and then lyrics that come to you, or do you start with an idea in mind or a lyric in mind and build from that?
I I usually have to kind of know what I'm writing about. Like when I'm so I usually start with an idea or a concept. Um, I I find that I have tried that, a lot. Like I will have a musical idea, or like a riff or a chord progression that I like. Um, but if I don't know what I'm trying to say in the song, then it just kind of goes nowhere. Um, but also, speaking of the contrast, between jubilance and dolor, I, a lot of my music is very sad. It's got, it's some very, very heavy material.
Okay.
Um, um,
Any examples you want to share with us?
sure. Uh, One of the first song off my latest album is called "The Man in the Black Felt Hat." And it was a tribute to my brother-in-law who passed away from bladder cancer a couple years ago.
Sorry.
Um, but the story is a very happy story. It's the story comes from a story my niece told me right after he died, about when she was a little girl, and they were growing up on the farm back in Nebraska, and she loved horses. She just loved horses, but her dad told her, we're not getting you a horse. And but then one day he took her to the horse auction, and he's like, we're just looking at the livestock. We're not here to get you a horse. But she came across this one Palomino gelding horse, and she just fell in love with it. And she just sat there petting it and talking to it the whole day, you know. And then when they went into the auction, she didn't realize what was happening, but her dad was standing behind her and he was bidding on the horse. And she didn't realize what was happening until the auctioneer said, "Sold to the man in the black felt hat." And then she turned around, and her dad was smiling, and he said, "Okay, this is your horse now." And she said she was so happy she just burst into tears
Oh, wow.
immediately. And
That is one. That's a great story.
thanks. I liked it too. And she said that was the first time in her whole life she'd ever cried from joy. And that was her favorite memory of her dad. And she wondered if I could turn it into a song. So that was a happy memory of someone that, but a very sad, way that they passed. Just in general, kind of, I try to keep it, the material's heavy enough, and that's one thing that I've noticed, like singer-songwriters, and one thing that I hope I'm good at too, is keeping it kind of light, like trying to, people are there to have a good night, they don't want to come to a show to cry their eyes out for an hour. There's got to be a little laughter too,
Yes.
So yeah, sad songs, funny stories. That's my MO.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It's kind of like, the permanent wake mode. When you go to a wake, you don't go there to just, mourn and cry. You go there to tell the stories that make you smile through your tears about the person who has departed. So that's kind of cool. Are there any social justice oriented issues that move you in particular, or that have motivated you to write songs?
I mean,
and I use the phrase social
yes.
justice very broadly.
Yeah, that's pretty
any kind
broad.
of issue.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I just thinking of, things that have affected everybody, or from like growing up in a small town in southeast Nebraska, like I saw a lot of things, like the oxycodone epidemic was a huge problem. I can't count the number of people that we've all buried back there, because of that. And seeing stuff like, like the poor kid, I grew up, right after 9/11. So the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war and everything was, I knew a lot of people who went to war, and a couple who died in the war, and so, yeah, I mean, there's, I guess, you could, yeah, so those are social justice issues,
Sure.
Yeah, and I try to kind of generally take the more of the Dolly Parton approach to political issues. Like Dolly is obviously, a feminist icon, but she really lets her music do the talking for her. And that's kind of what I try to do too. I think obviously I have my own opinions about social justice issues, but for me it all just comes down to humans. Like I love people, and that's what it comes down to for me. And so I try not to. I play in a lot of places where people have strongly different opinions of politics than I do. I play in a lot of red states and stuff, and so I try not to browbeat people with my political opinions, because at the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, we're all facing a lot of the same issues.
That's right.
We're all broke and getting screwed over by the government, and and when it comes down to it, the things that divide us are not as big as we think they are.
Interesting. If I may ask, what sort of work did your parents do?
They're dairy farmers.
So you were a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Interesting. So you were like up at 4 in the morning and in bed by 8?
Yep. Yep. We milked 3 times a day, and the morning milking started at 2 a.m.
Or 2 a.m.?
Yep.
Oh, I
2
see.
a.m. to start, and then the helper would come in at 4, and you'd get done about 8 or 9 a.m. And then the noon milking would start at 10:30 or 11, and then the last one would start at 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep. And you said your family was a bit more conservative, in terms of its
Um,
overall.
Kind of. So, my dad's side of the family are actually quite progressive. Uh, they're 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 all Christians, but my they're from a denomination of Christianity that's kind of adjacent to the Mennonites. So they're very hardcore pacifist. That was my grandpa was a hardcore pacifist. He was one of the founders of an organization called Nebraskans for Peace. Um, and he was even a conscientious objector in World War II,
Wow.
which was, yeah. Um, and, which was even more, like my dad and my uncles were conscientious objectors for Vietnam, but, that was a very unpopular war.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
It's hard to imagine someone being a CO for in World War II. I don't even know if I could have done that.
Yeah, he said that when he was during that, he said like his neighbors came and painted his door yellow and stuff, because he wouldn't go fight. Um, yeah, so that side of the family was is quite socially progressive. Um, uh, but but other members of my family, are very conservative and hold religious views that I don't particularly share. Um,
But
which
all of that shaped you in terms of your perspectives on issues and your desire to have some degree of balance and focus on humanity and the communication part. That's what it sounds like.
yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. I think um, that definitely shaped me. Having two people in my family who don't necessarily agree on a lot of things. But and I think some of that is some of my Midwestern upbringing too. You know.
Sure, sure. It makes sense to me. And speaking of your Midwestern upbringing, you mentioned you play in a lot of red states, and in general, it seems like you travel a lot and have a
Mhm.
lot of gigs in different parts of the country. What is your schedule like? Are you like playing every week somewhere, or is there a season for you, or
Not
what's your
really.
approach?
I well, I'm when I'm not on tour, I have a few students that I teach guitar to, um, and normally I keep fairly busy, you know, with the gigging. Right now, I'm in kind of a slow period, and I don't really know what the hell I'm gonna do with myself. So I'm trying to figure out next year what all my schedule is gonna be like. Um, I try to make sure I have at least a couple gigs a week, but winter's always slow. So
Right, and it's just you. It's you're a solo actor. Do you have a
yeah,
group that plays with you?
yeah, I do. I mostly do the folk singer thing, just solo, and then but I have every now and I take some bar gigs with like a country band that I play with, and uh, uh, like a bluegrass group that kind of has a rotating cast of musicians. Um,
You
that
do
will
any session work?
I not really. Uh, like I said, those gigs always go to the most amazing guitar players, and I'm don't get me wrong, I'm pretty damn good. I'm pretty damn good
Yeah,
guitar
but
player.
in all fairness, one of the great things about New York is that I don't know if it's great, but I personally like it. It's is that opportunities like sessions and stuff really depend on who you know and who you've met as much as talent. And so the reality is, if someone meets you and likes your style of playing, they're going to call you up and say, "Hey, listen, I'm doing something on this, this, this. You would be great on it." And they're not asking whether or not you were, playing with Al Di Meola last week. They're basically like, I like the way you play. I want that to be a part of what I'm doing. And I think that happens a lot in this city. So maybe,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get some session work. I really would. uh, uh, yeah, yeah.
Cool, very cool. So, so as you look at your touring schedule and the work you've been doing, um, I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming that you have a very full repertoire of material, both covers and originals. And do you find yourself inspired on a regular basis to write new songs, or is it really a matter of lightning striking and saying, "Oh, I got to write something now about this," or do you sort of put yourself on a little bit more of a schedule? I mean, some writers actually say, "You know what, I need to have 12 new songs this year or whatever," and that way they make sure that they always have new material since they're touring a lot. They always want to bring new stuff to their audiences. Not quite Taylor Swift style, but but in terms of variety always keeps people engaged. How do you approach that?
That's a thing that I think about a lot, and I wish I was better about, because some of the best writers that I know, make a point to do it every day, and my creative process has always been a little slower than some people's. I usually kind of have to be inspired or like have the thought. One thing I do with traveling so much, I'm always in the car, and that's a lot of times that's where I'll hash out ideas while I'm just driving, and then like I just have a little voice recorder, and I have like a million voice memos about.
Yes, and one day you'll download them all to your computer and really listen.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to dig through all of them, and I'm gonna have so many new songs.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
I've got this folder. It's called phone downloads. I think there's like 300 different pieces of things that I've sung into the phone as I was walking in the park or whatever. It's phones are a wonderful thing now. We didn't have that when I was your age or when we were younger. To automatically record things like that. So it's a blessing in that regard. But at the same time, it gets overwhelming because you have so much stuff, and then you got to take the time to go do it, and you have to be disciplined about it if it's going to work. And you start feeling guilty. Oh, gee, I didn't listen to enough of the stuff. Oh, that idea was good. I didn't convert. So it can get a little overwhelming. But at the same time, we all have our way of going through it. So obviously you're working yours through, which is fine. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I sometimes when I listen back to those, it was like something it was like song idea, and I'm like drunk at 4 a.m. or something. And then I listen back to it, I'm like, what the hell was that?
You were inspired by something.
Yeah, it seemed like a great idea at the time.
That's very funny. So let me ask you this: what brought you to the People's Voice Cafe? I mean, you have a show coming up. You're one of the two performers on PVC's roster for January 27th, 2024, 8:00 p.m. At Judson Memorial Church Assembly Hall in the Village, for those of you who don't know. So my question is, what brought you to People's Voice Cafe? How did you connect with us?
I think I was looking for new places to play in New York that I hadn't played at yet. And then I kind of stumbled across it online and just read about it. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, but send them an email. So then you guys booked me. So.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, obviously we were impressed. We don't just book anybody.
I know. I felt
cool.
honored.
And I'm assuming you have a little bit of a fan base here in New York. People who like you come to see you and stuff like that.
A couple people, yeah. I think.
You'd be surprised. Everybody probably has more fans than they realize. It's just the work of developing the fan base is also another overwhelming aspect of this business.
For sure.
But still. So how many albums have you put out, or how many, recordings in general? They may not all be albums. They might be EPs. They might be singles, whatever. What's your output like? Where do we find your stuff and, all that kind of stuff?
So I've done 3 albums of my own material. And then there's an old band that I used to play with that I played bass on a couple things with them. But yeah, so I used to have this really dumb stage name. I called myself Boneheart Flanagan for about a decade against the better advice of everybody.
Boneheart Flanagan. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask what the inspiration for that was, but I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah. No, it was kind of this long story of when I was in Chicago. A buddy of mine and I got into this. We got hired by this band to be their crew. They swore up and down that they'd been hired. They'd been signed to Columbia Records, and they were going on tour and they needed a crew, so they hired me as their guitar tech. But I still never figured out what this lady's motivation was. I think she was just severely mentally ill, and found some gullible people. And so like they kept telling us, oh, we're going to go on tour this thing. And then it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And I was like, even at 20 years old, I was like, I don't think this is how this works, So eventually I quit. And then my other buddy quit too. And he had this, he always comes up with the most hilarious names and ideas and stuff. And he was like, you know what we should do, Johnny? He's like, we should make up a fake band and tell her that we want her to come. We heard she did such a great job with this other band. We want her to come check out our band. And then when she drives up to Chicago from Indiana, then we'll go out in the car and we'll mess up her car, Big Lebowski style,
Oh no!
And I was like, okay. I was like, that sounds fun. What's that? What's our band gonna be? And he goes, Boneheart Flanagan, 2-ton mousetrap. And I was like, that's weird. Why that? And he goes, well, you're Boneheart Flanagan. And I said, okay. So, and then I had this idea, like somebody, I don't remember who I even had this challenge with. Somebody was like, we were talking about like the value of a good name, and I was like, you could call yourself whatever you want. You can, there's a band that I think is great that's called Fart Barf, and I was like, you could call yourself Boneheart Flanagan. It doesn't matter as long as your music's good. And
that's true.
And then so then I just took that name just as I don't know why, just to make it harder on myself.
You were 20 years old. Okay, we forgive you.
Yeah, it started out. I had this idea of it, like it was going to be a character, that it was like I was going to be this. It was going to be this character that I did, and like I was even going to have like a comic book to go along with it and stuff. Oh. But then it just ended up being me. and so
modern marketing, I love it.
Yeah, so this last one was my first album that I've put out under my real name, and I think Jon Dell is way easier to remember and spell than Boneheart.
Yeah, except that when they hear Jon Dell, they're going to put the H in the John.
They do it all the time.
Yeah, right.
They do it all the time. My favorite is when I'll send an email and it's got my email address. It's spelled right. It's got my website. It's got my logo. It's got my signature, and they still respond with an H.
You know what? We all have our crosses to bear. That's one. You made it easy with Dell computers by putting Dell there. It's like, now I figured we'll torture you with something else.
Yeah.
That's very funny. So what now? So now you have this album. It is named with your name, correctly spelled, and as far as we're concerned, as the listening public, what distinguishes this album from all previous recording efforts for you?
I think this is the best work I've ever done. I'm really proud of it. This is also the first album I did all the guitars myself. Did all the acoustic and the electric guitars on this one. And I think it's some of the strongest material I've ever written, and uh, and I had the band that backed me up is just a group of absolute killers. So I'm I'm really really happy with how it turned out. Um,
That's wonderful. That's a great feeling. That's really a good feeling. And you recorded that here in New York or somewhere else?
yeah, I recorded it at Metropolitan Studios in Williamsburg,
Uh-huh.
um, right on Metropolitan Avenue, right by
Right.
Skinny Dennis. Um, I was looking at working with a producer down in Kentucky, in Lexington, but then my friends who were the drummer and bass player in my band, uh, they were like, just do it with John, And then I I talked to him, and what he quoted me was significantly cheaper than what the guy in Kentucky quoted me. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing it with John. So,
Yeah, those little considerations do matter.
yeah,
So,
but
so what's the
he's a bit of a
response been
confidant.
like to the new album?
It's been great. It's been the best response I've gotten so far. Uh, it's been getting accepted to a lot more things, like added to playlists, getting
Oh, good, good, good.
like some people actually like I got a very nice write up in Adobe and Teardrops the other day that I was very happy about. That was very validating, and
Wonderful. Well,
yeah,
good. Well, congratulations. I'm glad. I'm very glad. It's nice to hear an artist say, "I'm really proud of this. This is the best work I've ever done." I don't always hear that. I hear people say, "Oh, I really love the album." Dot dot dot. It's like, you but it's great to hear enthusiasm. I look forward to purchasing it for myself and hearing your music. I look forward to having the opportunity to see you perform. That's going to be fun as well. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to share with our audience, like your website and things like that, and other stuff?
sure. Let's see. My website is just jondellmusic.com. JONDELL music.com. I'm also on, all the streaming stuff, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, all that stuff. Come check me out there. Um, the show at People's Voice Cafe is my next show. Um, so yeah, if anybody wants to come see me, come to the show at People's Voice Cafe.
Great, great. And we encourage you to reach out to those 5 people that you know who you think might come.
Oh, I will. I will.
And get them to come, and each of them to bring 2 friends along with them as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's
one of the other great things we offer is we do have the live stream option, particularly if you end up with a January storm the day that you're supposed to be performing, which usually cuts the audience in half, but they can still buy the live stream and watch it for 2 weeks, which is a wonderful thing. So, well, this has really been cool. I thank you for taking the time, John, and giving me the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. I look forward to not only seeing you and meeting you in person, but also for you to have the opportunity to come and, whether via live stream or in person, get a sample of People's Voice Cafe's work as well. I have to say that this past Saturday, we had the last show for December of 2023. 2 artists who I think you would have been very pleased to have heard. They gave a great show, Pat Victor and Reggie Harris. And the musicianship was quite on display. We have performers who really do wonderful, wonderful work. And I'm sure you're going to be added to that long list, that long quality list there.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, listen, happy holidays, happy new year, and I look forward to staying in touch.
All right. You as well. Thanks for having me.
Take care, John.
All right. Bye bye.